After studying this module, you shall be able to learn who a consumer is, understand the concept of consumer behavior, understand the need for studying consumer behavior, and analyze the factors that affect consumer behavior. Now let me introduce the module to you. Marketing orientation makes consumer the center stage of all the organizational efforts. An organization's success to a large extent depends on how well they can connect with the consumers. Therefore, it is essential for the companies to have a 360-degree view of both the daily lives of the consumers as well as the changes that occur during their lifetime, so that the right product can be marketed to the right consumers. Consumers are unique in themselves. Their needs, wants are diverse from one another. Their consumption pattern, their consumption behavior are varied. For an organization to survive and grow, it is essential for the organization to identify the needs and wants of their consumers. Though similar, consumers are unique in themselves. They have needs and wants which are varied and diverse from one another, and they have different consumption patterns and consumer behavior as well. Hence, the marketer helps to satisfy these needs and wants through product and service offerings. For a firm to survive, compete and grow, it is essential that the marketer identifies these needs and wants and provides product offerings more effectively and efficiently than the competitors. A comprehensive yet meticulous knowledge of consumers and their consumption behavior is essential for a firm to succeed. Now, let me explain you who is a consumer. A consumer can be defined as a person or a group of persons who purchases or consumes products or services. They basically identify a need or desire and then search for a product to satisfy their need. After that, they buy the product and consume it to satisfy the need. They are actually the actors in the marketplace. They buy the products for personal use and not for resale or manufacturing. A consumer could be an individual, a group of individuals, a business, or an organization, or even an industrial undertaking. Now I'll explain the concept and definition of consumer behavior, since a marketer needs to understand the behavior of the consumer so that he can strategize accordingly. Consumers are the fulcrum around which marketing revolves. Marketing starts with the understanding of the needs of the consumers and ends with the satisfaction of the consumers. So it becomes imperative for a business to understand the actions of consumers in the marketplace and what are the underlying causes for such actions. Hence, consumer behavior is the study of what consumers buy, why they buy, when they buy, from where they buy, in how much quantity they buy, and how often they buy. And last of all, how often they use it. For example, if the organization decides to manufacture a variety of shampoo, the organization needs to analyze the individual consumption behavior so as to why consumers use shampoo, that is, whether they use it to reduce hair fall or to prevent dandruff, which brand of shampoo they buy, whether they buy Sunsilk or L'Oreal, why he buys it, because he feels it will reduce hair fall better than the competing brands, when he buys it, whether weekly or monthly, from where he buys it, supermarket or a retail outlet, how much he buys it, 100 grams or 200 grams. The answer to all these depends on the consumer's social and cultural background, age and family's life cycle, social class, perception, self-concept, attitude, beliefs, and many other factors that lie internal and external to the consumer. Hence, consumer behavior can be defined as the study of how consumers, which includes obviously all the individuals, groups and organizations, how they select, buy, use and dispose goods and services, ideas and experiences for the satisfaction of their needs. consumer behavior is a multidisciplinary subject and has its roots in different disciplines like psychology, sociology, marketing, social anthropology, and economics. The objective of consumer behavior is to understand the decision-making process of the consumers individually as well as in groups and analyze how emotions have an effect on their decision to buy. Schiffman and Canuck have defined consumer behavior as the behavior that consumers display in searching for, purchasing, using, evaluating, and disposing of products and services that they expect will satisfy their needs. Now, let us understand the need for studying consumer behavior. Consumer is a priority of business. Marketing begins with needs of consumers and ends with the satisfaction of consumers. An understanding of consumer behavior enables organizations to produce those goods and services that consumers want. Also, modifications can be made in product designs, components, packaging, etc. according to the requirements of the consumers. Moreover, with time, the needs and preferences of the consumers undergo a drastic change. An understanding of consumer behavior helps the organizations to adapt to such kind of changes. Knowledge of consumer behavior on the part of the organizations helps them to plan and implement their marketing strategies in a more effective manner. Market segmentation and selection of a market largely depends on a thorough understanding of the consumer behavior. The marketing mix cannot be developed until the marketers do not have an understanding of the consumers. In short, the success of an organization largely depends on how well the marketers understand their consumers. There are certain factors that affect the consumer behavior, and a marketer needs to understand all those factors so that he can efficiently make a marketing plan. So, what are these factors? Let us discuss them now. There are a number of factors that affect buying behavior of consumers. These factors can be classified under 4 heads: cultural factors, social factors, personal factors, and psychological factors. Now, I will be talking about the cultural factors. Cultural factors are the primary determinant of a person's needs and wants. Culture encompasses values, beliefs, ideologies, law, customs, languages, and the morals of a particular community or group of individuals. It is shared, learned, prescriptive, enduring, dynamic, and cumulative. Now let me explain the concept of culture. Culture is the most basic source of consumers' wants and behavior. It reflects the way consumer views the world. It is mostly a learned behavior that an individual acquires from the society he or she grows in. For example, a child growing in United States is exposed to values like achievement, practicality, success, efficiency, individualism, freedom, whereas a child growing in India is exposed to values like respect and care for elders, hard work, honesty, integrity, social harmony, and sacrifice. Even within the same country, people belonging to different regions have different cultures which are reflected in the kind of products they demand. For example, women from Assam and West Bengal prefer to buy saris as compared to women living in Haryana and Punjab. Similarly, people in North India prefer chapatis over rice as compared to people living in East and South India. Culture is one of the most important factors that have an effect on the consumer behavior. It is pervasive in all marketing activities. It forms the basis of market segmentation, designing of the product, packaging of the product, and promotional strategies. Marketers need to be very careful while analyzing the culture of different groups, regions, and countries. Within culture is imbibed subculture. Each culture consists of small, distinct, identifiable groups that have unique characteristics. These subcultures provide more specific identification for their members. Subculture includes religions, nationalities, racial groups, and geographic regions. Consumer preferences are influenced by the subculture they belong to. For instance, Hindu brides wear red, maroon, or some bright color lehenga on their wedding, whereas Muslim brides wear green and Christian brides wear white. Similarly, Hindus consider eating beef a sin, whereas Muslims and Christians relish it. Social class. Now I'll discuss social class, which lies in the ambit of subculture. Some form of social stratification takes place in almost all societies. The most frequent form is social class. Social classes are hierarchical, homogeneous divisions in the society, which are the representative of a cluster of variables like occupation, income, wealth, education, etc. The members of a particular social class share similar set of values, interests, and patterns of behavior. Social classes differ on the basis of speech patterns, recreation preferences, clothing, and so on. Under the social class system, individuals are perceived to occupy superior or inferior positions. It is possible for an individual during his lifetime to move up or down on the social class ladder. In India, marketers use socio-economic classification, which is a combination of chief wage earners, education, and occupation to classify consumers in urban areas. All the households in the urban areas are divided into 8 categories, namely A1, A2, B1, B2, C, D, and E1, E2, wherein A1 represents highest purchase potential and E2 is indicative of the lowest. Similarly, for rural areas, a scale has been developed by the marketers based on the occupation of the chief wage earner of the household. The households are classified into 4 broad categories, namely R1, R2, R3, and R4, wherein R1 is the indicative of high purchase potential and R4 is low purchase potential. Consumers in different social classes show distinct product and brand preferences in areas like clothing, automobiles, leisure activities, etc. For instance, people belong to A1 or A2 category would buy Mercedes or BMW or Jaguar, whereas a person belonging to B1 or B2 might buy a Honda or a Skoda. Now I will discuss the impact of social factors on consumer behavior. Human beings are social animals. They need people to communicate and share their ideas and views. Just like cultural factors, social factors also play a significant role in the consumer decision-making process. Under this comes the role of reference groups. A group comes into existence when 2 or more persons interact to realize a common goal. A person's reference group consists of all those groups that have direct or indirect influence on their attitude and behavior. The groups that have a direct influence on the individual's behavior are referred to as membership groups, and the groups which individuals interact continuously and informally are referred to as primary groups and consists of family, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. The groups with which individuals do not interact continuously or interact formally are known as secondary groups, and these groups consist of professional, religious, and trade union groups. Consumers also tend to get influenced by groups to which they do not belong. A group that an individual aspires to join is known as aspirational group, and the groups whose behavior and attitudes are rejected by an individual are called disassociative groups. Reference groups impact their members by exposing them to new behaviors and lifestyles, and also influencing their self-concept and attitude. The beliefs, the attitudes, and the consumption practices of the reference groups obviously have an influence on the behavior of the consumers. Consumers take cues from the reference groups when they purchase anything from automobiles, jewelry to clothing. Reference groups generally influence consumers in 2 ways. These influences are normative influence and informational influence. Now, what is normative influence? Normative influence takes place when consumers perform their actions that conform to the expectations of another person. This influence is driven by established norms of behavior, that is, according to what is acceptable to the society. The reference group that exerts normative influence on the consumer has the ability to reward or punish an individual's behavior. Normative influences have an effect on the consumers when they buy products that will be consumed in public. For example, when a consumer is buying clothes, normative influences will play a role, since the consumer wants to avoid being ridiculed or expects to receive compliments. In contrast, if the products are to be consumed privately, the normative influences are less likely to affect the consumer's decision. For example, Normative influences have little role to play in consumers' decision to buy mattresses. The second type of influence is informational influence. This type of influence takes place when the consumer is provided information to help him make a purchase decision. The information provided generally is based on the personal experience of the individual providing that information. It helps the consumer to save time and money as it cuts down the search time and the consumer gets access to the reliable product without having to incur replacement costs. The informational influences have greater impact on the consumer buying decision since consumers associate word of mouth with greater value, especially when the source of information is personally known to them. Informational influences tend to dominate in the purchase of products that are complex because a high amount of learning is required before purchasing them, such as houses, and for product in which some kind of risk is involved, such as pediatric care. Now, the role of family on consumer buying. Family is defined as a group of two or more persons residing together who are related by birth, marriage, or adoption. In the life of an individual, family can be distinguished into two types: the family of orientation and the family of procreation. Parents and siblings make the consumer's family of orientation and have the maximum amount of influence. They influence the consumer's orientation towards politics, religion, economics, and has an impact on the consumer's self-worth and ambition. Family of procreation consists of consumer's spouse and children. They have a direct influence on everyday buying behavior of the consumers. Depending on the type of product, different members of the family dominate the decision-making process. For example, the decision regarding which automobile to be bought or which insurance policy to buy are generally influenced by husbands, whereas the decision regarding kitchen appliances are generally influenced by wives. The impact of role and status on consumer buying behavior. An individual is a part of many groups, which include family, clubs, and organizations. Role refers to the activities an individual is required to perform as a part of the group or groups to which he belongs. Each role that an individual performs has an effect on the status he enjoys in the society. Moreover, each individual plays a dual role in the society, depending on the group to which they belong. The vice president of marketing in a reputed firm also plays the role of a father and a husband at home. Consumers buy products according to the status they enjoy in the society and the role they play. Consumers buy Ferrari or Porsche not just for the superior quality, but also because these cars represent social success. Hence, it is important for the marketers to be aware of the status symbol potential of the products. Now, I will discuss the impact of personal factors on the consumer buying behavior. The personal characteristics of an individual, such as age, the life cycle stage, occupation, personality, and the lifestyle, they all have a direct bearing on the consumer's decision as to what to buy. Now let us discuss the impact of age and life cycle stage. Over the lifespan of the individual, they generally buy 100 types of products. The products that they buy at 20 years of age will be different from the product that they will buy at the age of 70. As the age of an individual grows, an evolution takes place in his values, lifestyle, hobbies, habits, which have an impact on the type of products he consumes. For instance, an individual, as he grows in age, may change his diet from unhealthy products, that is fast food, etc., to a healthy products to avoid health issues. Often, the consumer's preferences in food, clothing, furniture, and recreation modify according to their age. Overall, the life cycle stage has an impact on the consumer behavior in the marketplace. An individual who is single, or the one who is married, or married with kids, married with no children living in, retired, etc., offer different type of opportunities for the marketers. For example, a young single individual would prefer to buy smartphones or gadgets, basic furniture, trendy clothes, exotic vacations, whereas the married couples with young children would prefer to buy toys, healthy food, comfortable clothes, bicycles, and life insurance policies. Now we'll discuss the impact of occupation and economic factors. An individual's decision to buy or not to buy a particular product largely depends on his occupation and income as well. A blue-collar worker would buy clothes required for work, comfortable shoes, whereas the president of a company would buy designer clothes, country club membership, air travel, etc. Software company design different products for lawyers, accountants, engineers, physicians, etc. Whereas economic circumstances refer to an individual's level of income, stability of income, time pattern of income, the assets owned by him, his savings, the proportion of assets that are liquid, borrowing power, debts, and his attitude towards borrowing and spending. These factors together represent the economic circumstances greatly, and they impact the product choices made by the consumers as they influence the consumer's capability to pay. Now, personality and self-concept. Personality refers to a combination of characteristics or quality that are relatively consistent and form an individual's distinctive character. They are inner psychological characteristics of an individual that are manifested in their outer behavior. Personality is relatively enduring but may change with time and abrupt events. It is often defined in the terms of traits such as self-confidence, sociability, dominance, defensiveness, and adaptability. Each individual's personality has an impact on the type of products they consume. Brands like consumers also have personality, and consumers are likely to choose those brands whose personality matches their own. Marketers need to understand that to attract more consumers, brands need to develop a personality of traits and values which is in sync with the consumers they are targeting. For example, Apple has built an image of innovativeness, creativity, and boldness, which is able to attract consumers who identify with these values and feel valued by buying a product from Apple. Consumers don't just buy products based on their needs and the features of the products. They also look for the products that are consistent and reinforces with the image that they have of themselves or the image they would like to have. Now I will discuss the impact of lifestyle. Lifestyle is the way in which a person lives. A lifestyle is a means of forging a sense of self and to create cultural symbols and resonate with personal identity. It is an individual's pattern of living and is expressed through his activities, interests, opinions, and desires. Individuals belonging to the same culture, social class, occupation, and even family may lead a very different lifestyles. It is imperative for the marketers to search for relationships between their products and lifestyle groups. The types of products that are consumed by consumers depend on the lifestyle they follow. If an individual follows a healthy lifestyle, they are likely to purchase organic products, buy sports shoes, join gyms, etc. Now I will discuss the impact of psychological factors on the consumer behavior. Consumer responses are influenced by 4 psychological processes that are motivation, perception, learning, and attitude. Motivation. The term motivation is derived from the word motive, which refers to the needs, drives, urges, wants, or impulses within an individual. They are the starting point in the motivation process. Motivation is an activated internal need state leading to a goal-oriented behavior to satisfy that need. Motives are relatively enduring, strong, persistent internal stimuli that arouse and direct the behavior towards certain goals. Recognition of need is the starting point of the consumer buying process. Need can be defined as the lack of something useful. Some needs are biogenic, while others are psychogenic. Biogenic needs arise from psychological state of tension, such as thirst, hunger, discomfort, whereas psychogenic needs arise from psychological state of tension, that is, need for recognition, esteem, or belongingness. A need becomes a motive when it's aroused to a sufficient level of intensity to drive an individual to act. An individual can be motivated to buy a product for convenience, for style, for prestige, or for self-pride, or being at par with others. If the marketers know what creates motivation, they will be able to develop marketing strategies that will be able to influence consumers' motivation to think about, be involved with, and process information about the brand and product. The role of perception. Perception is the process by which an individual selects, organizes, and interprets information input to create a meaningful picture of the world. Perception depends not only on physical stimuli, but also on the relationship of the stimuli with the surrounding field and on conditions within each individual. For example, a salesperson talking fast may be perceived by some people as aggressive, while some may perceive him to be intelligent. An individual faces thousands of stimuli daily, and it is not possible for the brain to process all the stimuli consciously. The brain focuses only on a few, depending on the individual's personal experiences, beliefs, and characteristics. Perception mechanism can be organized into 3 processes. The first process is the selective attention. Attention is the allocation of processing capacity to stimulus. Attention could be voluntary or involuntary. Voluntary attention is something purposeful, whereas involuntary attention is grabbed by someone or something. Selective attention refers to the process where individuals pay attention to information that is of use to them or their immediate family members. A consumer in a single day is exposed to numerous advertisements, billboards, hoardings, etc. But he is only interested in those few which will benefit him. He would not be interested in information which is not relevant at the moment. A consumer is likely to be more attentive to a stimulus that relates to current need. Suppose a customer is interested in buying a laptop. He is more likely to notice advertisements of the laptops rather than the advertisements of TV. Also, consumers are large in relationship to the normal size of stimuli. For example, an individual will notice an ad offering ₹100 off on the selling price rather than ₹5 off. And lastly, a consumer is likely to be attentive to a stimuli or information that is relatively new or out of ordinary. For instance, an innovative advertisement that is different from that of competitors is more likely to catch the attention of the consumers. The next process is selective distortion. The noticed stimuli don't always come across in the way of the senders to which it is intended. In many situations, two individuals are not likely to interpret information or a stimulus in the same way. Each individual will have a different perception based on his experience, state of mind, beliefs, and attitudes. Selective distortion leads people to interpret situations in such a manner that they are consistent with their values and beliefs. For marketers, it means a message that communicates about the brand in the forms of advertisements, billboards, press releases, etc. may not be perceived by the consumers exactly in the same manner in which it is intended. Thus, it becomes imperative for the brands to regularly ask consumers in order to know their actual brand perception. Popular and strong brands are generally benefited from selective distortion when consumers distort neutral or ambiguous brand information to make it more positive. A number of experiments have shown that if a consumer is given the same product, they are likely to find that the product is and tastes better when you have been told that it's from a brand they like than when they have been told it's a generic brand, while the product is exactly the same. Now the third process is the selective retention. It is not possible for an individual to retain all the stimuli and information they have been exposed to. Selective retention means that the individual will retain only that information which will fit their existing beliefs and perceptions. Because of the selective retention, consumers are likely to remember only the good points of a brand they like and forget good points about the competing brands. Selective retention works for strong brands. Moreover, it emphasizes the need for brands to use repetition to ensure that the message is not overlooked. Now, the impact of learning on consumer behavior. Learning induces changes in an individual's behavior that arise from their past experiences. In every circumstance, an individual's perception is conditioned by their prior experiences, for it is this which constitutes their preparatory set or expectations and the framework into which they seek to place and organize new stimuli. In other words, a consumer learns from their prior experiences and tries to maintain a balance by relating and interpreting new stimuli in terms of past or learned stimuli. Most human behavior is learned, although much is incidental. Learning takes place due to interplay of drive, stimuli, cues, responses, and reinforcements. Marketers can build demand for their products by associating the product with strong drives, using motivational cues, and providing positive reinforcement. Now I'll tell you the impact of beliefs and attitude on consumer behavior. Attitude and beliefs are acquired by an individual through experience and learning. A belief is a descriptive thought that an individual holds about something. Attitude can be defined as a feeling, an assessment of an object or idea, and the predisposition to act in a certain way towards that object. Attitudes allow the individual to develop a coherent behavior against a class of similar objects or ideas. Beliefs as well as attitudes are generally part of the individual's personality and are difficult to change. Marketers need to keep a track of beliefs that consumers formulate about their products because beliefs make up product image, and product image have an impact on the consumer's decision making to buy. If the consumers have formulated some negative belief about the product which is preventing the purchase, the marketer will have to come out with a campaign to correct that. Consumers have attitude regarding policies, religion, food, music, clothing, etc. Just like belief, the attitude of the consumer also has an impact on the consumer's decision to purchase a product. It is important for the marketers to gauge the attitude of the consumers towards their product and brand. If the attitude of the consumers is negative, they need to come out with strategies that will change their attitude. However, if the attitude of the consumer towards the company brand or products is positive, it is essential for marketers to take measures that will ensure in keeping the attitude positive only. Let us understand the meaning of decision making. Decision making is the process of choosing the best alternative from a number of different alternatives that are available. It is the act of making a choice after evaluating the pros and cons of each alternative. It is a problem-solving and goal-oriented process. Decision-making process can take two forms: programmed decision-making and non-programmed decision-making. Now let me explain the programmed decision-making. It is the process of finding solutions to regular and routine problems. Generally, guidelines to deal with these problems exist and are made without much thought. Non-programmed decision-making, on the other hand, is the process of finding solutions to problems that are new, unique, or arise suddenly. The individual taking the decision needs to gather a lot of information and deliberation before arriving at a solution. Now let us understand what is meant by consumer decision making. Consumer decision making refers to the cognitive process undertaken by every consumer in regard to potential market transaction before, during, and after they purchase a product or service. It refers to the decisions consumers take about what to buy, how much to buy, from where to buy, from whom to buy, when to buy, and how to buy. It is very important for marketers to understand the consumer's decision-making process. Consumers constantly make decisions about the products that are to be bought. These decisions are important not only to the consumers but also to the marketers. The decision-making process is complicated as consumers often have a number of alternatives from which they can choose. Now we will talk about the factors that affect consumer decision making. There are a number of factors that affect consumers' decisions to buy a product. They can be broadly classified into 4 categories. The first one being the cultural factors. Cultural factors are the primary determinant of a person's needs and wants. Culture encompasses values, beliefs, ideologies, law, customs, languages, and morals of a particular community or a group of individuals. The second factor that affect consumer decision making are social factors. Human beings are social creatures. They have an inherent need to connect with fellow individuals. The next important factors are personal factors. The personal factors are the personal characteristics of the consumers, such as age, life cycle stage, occupation, personality, and lifestyle. They have a direct impact on the consumer's decision to purchase a product. Psychological factors also influence consumer responses, and they are four in types: motivation, perception, learning, and attitude. Motivation. Motivation is an activated internal need state leading to a goal-directed behavior to satisfy that particular need. Recognition of a need is the starting point of the consumer buying process. A need becomes a motive when it is aroused to a sufficient level of intensity to drive an individual to act, which means to buy a product. Perception. Perception is a process by which an individual selects, organizes, and interprets the information input to create a meaningful picture of the world. The way a consumer perceives a product or brand affects his decision to buy a product. Learning. Learning induces changes in an individual's behavior and arises from their past experiences. A consumer learns from their prior experiences. This learning helps the consumer to decide which product to buy and which brand to buy. Beliefs and attitudes. A belief is a descriptive thought that an individual holds about something, whereas attitude can be defined as a feeling, an assessment of an object or idea, and the predisposition to act in a certain way towards that object. Beliefs and attitudes that consumers have towards a product or brand influence their decision-making process. Now let us understand in detail the consumer decision-making process. The consumer decision-making process involves 5 stages, namely problem recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase decision, and post-purchase behavior. Now I'll discuss need recognition and problem awareness. The decision-making process is initiated when the consumer identifies a problem or need that has to be fulfilled. Problem arises when there is a difference between the desired and the actual state of affairs. The final decision to buy a product is not made at once, even though consumers recognize their problem and pay attention to whatever products are available. The consumers identify all the available options that can solve their problem or fulfill their need. They then gather all the information about the selected options and eventually judge which of the available options is most likely to deliver the desired outcome. Once all the information has been gathered by the consumer, he will evaluate all the alternatives that are available and select the one that fulfills his needs the best. Consumers generally evaluate the alternatives on 2 aspects: the objective characteristics of the product and the subjective characteristics. The objective characteristics include the features of the product, its functionality, whereas the subjective characteristics include the perception and the perceived value that the consumer and his family and friends have about the product's brand or the company selling the product. Once the consumer has evaluated all the products that are available to satisfy his needs, he will choose the most appropriate product and proceed with the actual purchase itself. However, there are 2 factors which interfere between the purchase intention and purchase decision, which are attitude of others and an unanticipated situational factor which might arise out of contingency. Attitude of others is the amount to which another person's negative attitude towards the preferred alternative results in a readjustment of consumer's purchase decision. The extent to which the attitude of others affects the consumer's decision to purchase depends upon the intensity of other person's negative attitude towards the chosen alternative and the motivation of the consumer to comply with the wishes of other. The next step in the process is post-purchase evaluation or post-purchase behavior. Once the consumer has purchased the product, he tries to rationalize the purchase decision. The consumers will make a comparison between the actual performances of the product with that of the expected in terms of performance from that product. Now I will summarize the whole module. Number 1. The success of organization depends on how well it understands its customers. Number 2. Marketing begins and ends with consumers. Number 3. Consumer behavior is the study of what consumers buy, why they buy, when they buy, from where they buy, in how much quantity they buy, how often they buy, and how often they use it. Number 4, it is important for organizations to understand consumer behavior so that they can satisfy the consumers better, segment and market effectively, come out with products that consumers want, modify their marketing strategies and marketing mixes so as to suit the requirements of the customers. 5. The consumer behavior is influenced by 4 major factors. Cultural factors, that includes culture, subculture and social class. Social factors, that include reference groups, family, roles and status of the consumer. Personal factors, that include age and life cycle stage, occupation and economic conditions, personality and self-concept and lifestyle. And lastly, the psychological factors, which include motivation, perception, learning, beliefs and attitudes. Thank you.